Today we're going to be covering realistic wood texture using pencil, but this time on a 3D shape like a box, cylinder, or anything else you prefer. This video is a part of a texture study series that has been started for a while in this channel. There are several videos already planned for this entire texture study series, but this is the second part of the wood texture tutorials. So how do we apply this to a 3D form this time? Before anything, let's just start off by drawing a box this time instead of a simple square to draw our texture in. So what I'm going to do is to draw a very simple cube right here in perspective that I can create my wood texture within. So this is going to be a wooden box and I'm just going to quickly sketch that. Then we need to determine the direction of the light source so that we can be able to divide each plane based on their position towards the light source and the amount of light they receive. Then we want to decide where our highlight, shadow, and our midtone planes are gonna be. Our cube has three visible sides as you can see here, so the top, the left, and the right, which is a great help with lighting directions. We can easily separate those three planes and we can say that the top is the lightest because the light hits from the top in this case. The left one will be a little bit darker and the right plane is completely in shadow. I'm gonna go ahead and add a very light gray value on top of my entire cube. So as usual, I take my HP graphite pencil and then I put a soft layer of graphite on my drawing. Fill in the shadow areas with darker values and the midtone areas with a midtone value. Leave the highlights with more white space since it's closer to the light source. Add even darker shadows on the opposite side of the light source. Do it in several layers and make it darker slightly. Then, first off, let's just add in the texture and sketch out the wood patterns. I like to start this by drawing some knots. The knot can be an oval or a circle. Draw the rings of the wood grain. Make each line twice as far out as the previous one. As you get closer to the edge of each plane, keep drawing in the air to add a sense of continuity as you loop back around. For the longer rings, draw with your whole arm. If there's any empty space, then it's all over, just continue the pattern. Make sure the knots are spaced far enough away so the rings won't overlap. Fill in any area that's left over by continuing the pattern, but be sure not to let the lines intersect or overlap. The steps are mostly the same as the previous tutorial. Then we drew the cracks in the wood on this cube. So I'll decide what I want those to be. All I'm gonna do is just lightly sketch those in where I think I want them to be. And again, I'm doing this very lightly at this stage so that if I need to erase anything, I can always come back and erase. So I think that's about where I want all my cracks to be. Of course, I can always add more later if I want. Then I can go ahead and darken those cracks. I'm gonna keep them pretty thin, but make them as dark as possible. So I switch my pencil to a 6B graphite. As I get to the end of these cracks, I'm gonna make some of them sort of fade out and get really thin on both ends since I don't want them all to connect back to the end of my planes to make them look more natural. Then I'll go ahead and pull these edges out just a little bit and really enhance those cracks by darkening them layer by layer. You can see that it already starts to pop out and look more 3D. Next, let's add some wood grain texture in there very lightly and with a sharp pencil. Use this sharpened pencil to create thin parallel lines. For me, it's still the same 6B graphite pencil. So add some interesting wood grain in there. There are different techniques we can do to add more texture to the drawing. We can add in some short broken lines or do some stipples and dot patterns or add a couple knots, which is basically just a swirly shape or a couple of circles within each other. And then I'm going to come over to this side, which is my mid-tone shadow side. Then I can go ahead and I start adding some wood grain in there. So I'm going to start right over here. I'll just quickly sketch that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'll go ahead and pull these edges out. Then I'm going to go back and darken all my cracks and the textures I created to bring my drawing to the next level. Leave a small space between each crack and the wood grain to create a highlight between them. Draw in additional details such as random strokes, horizontal broken lines, or imperfections. You can even add more cracks if you like. Make small differences in their texture and details. And I also change the amount of pressure that I apply with the pencil with each stroke so that these lines contrast with each other. Now quickly, I just add in a little bit more of that wood grain back in there because we kind of lost it in that dark value. Now we move on to these next planes. I can darken some areas to make a better contrast, and I can also create more random horizontal lines. Create those horizontal lines at different lengths, values, and sizes. Even some small vertical lines to give it a more natural texture. Here we'll be going in the same direction, and I drew these lines at different sizes, and I'll even have some of them changing direction slightly, maybe some chips in them amongst these grains. I darkened these rings and put a soft layer of graphite on them. You can use the same 6B graphite pencil with less pressure, or you can switch to a lighter pencil if you desire. I'm adding these short straight lines around each of these oval shapes and rings to finally cover the pattern outlines and make them feel more like a texture than a simple stroke. And then we can just continue to add that grain around it. We can also have our wood grain cross over these cracks. Make the pointy side of these ovals darker and add gradation to each one of them as you get closer to the central oval. Then I'm just going to lightly draw in some straight lines randomly. For the final step, I'll go for refining my texture. So double check your drawing and fix whatever you think you need to. So really quick, I'm going to darken those cracks again, and then I'm going to add some shadows so we can get that three-dimensional form. So we want to add a little bit of white space underneath each one of our cracks to create that third dimension by adding a highlight on the edges. So grab your knead eraser, shape it the way you like, and start to create those highlights on the edges. And we're just going to continue to do that all the way through our wood. Next, I'm just gonna darken these bottom edges of my box so it's a bit more grounded and also stands out a little bit more from my background. Finally, it's time to add a cast shadow on the ground. So the cast shadow is going to be cast off down at this angle. Then we can fill that with a darker value. The value you're using for the cast shadow is going to be darker than the core shadow, but it's not supposed to be as dark as the cracks and grooves we have on the wood itself. By following the steps in this tutorial, you can learn how to create your own realistic wood texture and use them to enhance your artwork. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Until next time,